So there's a lot of people in the world. I think my camera's a little foggy. Hold on, sorry. All right, a lot of people in the world, at least in this country, they don't understand how the banking system works. They don't understand what fractional banking is. So if you go to the bank and you try to get a loan for $100,000, the bank then, writes a little letter to the Federal Reserve or whatever. The Federal Reserve creates that currency. They send it to the bank, but the bank can only loan 90% of that money. So the bank can only actually loan, they can't loan you 100,000, they can loan you 90,000 of it. You have to keep that 10,000 in reserve. You go buy a house with that $90,000. You pay the person that money. That person goes and deposits that money into their bank. Now, 90% of that $90,000 can be loaned out, so they make an $81,000 loan. And it goes on. It's a Ponzi scheme, is what it is. Now, the problem with this scheme is that it only lasts so long before it folds, and that's where we're at now. We're about to see it fold. We're about to see the basement card being taken out of the house of cards because they've created a situation where it has to. And there's a reason for this. There's a reason why it's going to happen. And they want it to happen. Because when this happens, they have to create a new currency. And they do this through force and violence, just like they've made the dollar the world currency for the last, 50 years or 70 years, whatever it's been. Probably longer than that, I think. But anyway, you get the point. And it'll be a digital currency with the digital dollar. Now, recently I had an incident where the bank deposited a couple $100 in my bank account, a few $100 in my bank account. I called them and said, hey, this ain't my money. And they assured me it was. They made 8 separate deposits. And this was back in November. And I assured them that it wasn't my money. They're like, there's no way that somebody could have messed up 8 separate times. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So you can assure me you're not going to take this money out of my account. And they're like, yeah. Well, I get a phone call a few months later in the morning, and here's the problem with digital currency, the main problem with it that I see. Now, there's a few problems with it. This is one of the main problems. And they said, hey, we made a mistake. I was like, oh, you're talking about the mistake in November where I called you and said that you guys had made 8 separate deposits into my account that wasn't mine, that were manual deposits, and somebody screwed up 8 times, and you told me that they didn't, and that you would not be taking this money back out of my account no matter what. They're like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay, so now what's going to happen? They're like, well, we're taking the money back. I'm like, wait a second. You called me on a Tuesday and told me you're taking this money out of my account, and literally it's going to drain my bank account. I don't even get to say, well, just wait till next week. It's like, well, we're going to look into it. We're going to listen to the phone calls and see if that's what you were actually told. So when I while I'm on the phone with this person, I look at my bank account. The money's still there. When I hang up, I look again and it's gone. So all they did was hit a couple buttons and the money was gone. So what's going to happen is when there's a digital currency that they push through, it's supposed to be coming through in April or something, I think, is what TC from Truth Freedom Money podcast said. But what will happen is you then have no control over your money. They dictate if you can or can't make a purchase, how much money's in there, and if they don't like how much money's in there, they take it. You can't stop them. They have total control over your digital wallet. And like I said before, they will dictate whether or not you can or cannot make purchases, but that's not where they make their money. They make their money because they take their cut whether or not they decide whether or not you can or cannot make them purchases. So they take the cut no matter what. What happens because of this is the handful of the few up here at the top of the chain that are controlling all governments, media, social media throughout the world gain wealth until the end of mankind. And they gain wealth through fiat currency. They take the fiat currency, they buy 250,000 acres of farmland, they buy homes, and we're about to see when this moratorium's up, probably 40 million people that default on their mortgages. So what happens when that happens? Well, they now created these new $15 an hour jobs, or they will be anyway. It's a federal thing, I think. It hasn't went throughout the states. I know California has like a $15 minimum wage or whatever. But what will happen is the people that default on their loans will now not be able to get loans because they have a shitty credit score, which by then it'll probably be a social credit score. These new people that now can afford it will now buy these homes at a lower cost, while the banks still go after the other people for the money they defaulted on. You're all being scammed. We're all being scammed, even me. And it seems like every day I find a little bit more out of the scam. I watched a channel last night. Who was it? Oh, it's some guy from New Zealand that lives somewhere else now, and he's talking about how people are waking up. But he's a hardcore Trump supporter. I'm like, dude, how can you see that people are waking up if you're not even awake yourself to see what's happening? This is bigger than Trump. It's bigger than the Democratic Republican parties. It's bigger than the United States. The globalist thing. The end game is a global government, one world government. And we already have that. They just haven't told you yet. There's the few families at the top, the Rockefellers, the royal family, probably the Bloombergs. I'm sure the Gates have a little say in it, that control everything and everywhere. And you will comply, or you will be fucking, the force and violence of the government will be brought down on you. Why? Because they're paid to. They got families to feed, and that's the career paths they chose, to be state-hired thugs. And I assure you, there's a special place in hell for everybody that wears a badge. That's a fact. It's only going to continue to get worse. It's not going to get better. The only way it can get better is to actually get worse. Because hopefully if it gets bad enough, people will actually open their eyes up and see what's happening. There's not one problem that you have with government that doesn't have somebody wearing a badge standing behind that problem.